one thing I want to say, going back to like race car safety and stuff like that is anybody that reaches out to me, I don't care if they're a car builder or a sanctioning body or anything. I'm open book with everything that I have. I tell them exactly what I see, what I think. Maybe I don't have the right answer, but I at least, if somebody has the balls to call me and reach out, I'll give them everything I have to try to help them. So if anybody has questions or anything like that, get a hold of me somehow.
Green flag in the air.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Hot Lappin' with Landman. And yes, I know it has been a minute. Had a very busy fall, and I'm just excited to get back here in the studio and get some more stuff out for you folks to be able to see. I want to tell you a little story. A lot of the podcasts, a lot of the news coverage these days covers all the big names that we all know. Kyle Larson, Steve Kinzer, Sammy Swindell, Doug Wolfgang, Donnie Schatz, David Gravel, Carson Macedo, Brad Sweet, Rico Abreu. They talked to all the big name crew chiefs, Ricky Warner, Paul Silva, Davey Brown, Cody Jacobs. A lot of the big names are in that. But the people behind the scenes in the dirt track world are what makes the wheels go round, literally. Without the people that do the things that we aren't aware of, that a lot of the general race fans might not be aware of, we don't have racing. Flea Ruzik is a name many of you may not know, but it's somebody that you should get to know. Flea is a very unique person. He's a very good person. He is a self-taught fabricator. He's a car fixer. We're talking sprint car frames, midget frames, silver crown, outlaw carts, things along those lines. He can fix anything. It's crazy. He's a great car builder. He's an awesome welder. And he's what I call an engineer. Not only that, Flea is a self-taught guitar player. He says he can't read music, but he can play a song. He's a self-taught artist. We're talking canvases. We're talking oil base. This guy can paint. He's done some really cool stuff. And he's also a heck of a painter in a body shop. He paints race cars. He can paint vehicles. He can paint custom helmets. He's just a very unique person. Positive person. And another thing that I really like about Flea that I knew before I ever had the opportunity to visit with him, he is very, very supportive of his family. His family seems to come first for him. So this is the kind of guy that I think you guys will really enjoy listening to, talking about where he got his start, but especially where he's at today and the reputation that he has built amongst the dirt racing world in the open wheel especially. He's got a lot of respect from a lot of people out there. So I know it's been a while since I've been around, and we're going to get back to normal. I promise on that. We're going to get some more regular stuff going here. I got through my busy fall and all that stuff too. Speaking of Flea, if you want to keep up with him, follow him on Twitter, which is also X now. His handle is at RIP, RIP, Jetson, JETSON, the number 9. Go follow that guy. He's got some very interesting stuff, unique stuff. I think things that you guys would be interested in. He even has some solutions for some of our problems with our roll cages, and he throws out good ideas there. And I think it's something you'd very be interested in. If you like what I'm putting out, I'm going to ask like I always do. Give me a like, give me a follow, subscribe to my stuff. Just helps me get more stuff to you guys. Let's not wait around any longer. Let's get Flea in here, learn about Flea, his background, and what he does today. He's an awesome guy. All right, so I was really excited, like I said in my opener here, to get Flea on the show with us this week. And Flea, first of all, thanks so much for taking some time out of your really busy schedule to join us here at Hot Lappin' with Landman.
I don't know if I'd necessarily. I don't think I have a schedule. I think one phone call, one text message. I just kind of veer off, and anytime I've ever tried to plan something, I think it's taken us 4 nights to figure out how to get this going.
Yeah, we canceled and then we moved it back, and then you went go-kart racing and parked it in a Christmas tree or something yesterday afternoon.
It's bad.
And
good time though.
Yeah, absolutely. It looked like it. So, one thing I want to start off with you, and a lot of the people I think that kind of watch my show are going to be wondering, who is Flea Ruzik? Some of the real diehard sprint car fans, obviously, you're going to know. But you've lived a life of building race cars, fixing race cars, being a little bit of a race car driver yourself. But what I usually like to do is just give me a quick, brief idea of how you ever got the bug to even enter the world of dirt track racing.
So it started. I was born into a racing family. My dad raced sprint cars uh, in the late '60s, all the way up until 75 or 76. He got in a crash at Granite City, and actually a funny story. Um, the first sprint car my dad had was a Hurtubise car. It was a Jim Hurtubise car, and it had just a roll bar. And my grandpa, which his dad, he was a crane operator by trade, but my grandpa Ruzik did a little bit of everything. He liked building motors, like welding. He was an excellent gas welder. Like he could take a acetylene torch and lay a bead beautiful, just like a TIG welder. Okay. Oddly enough, he couldn't TIG weld, but my dad gets his sprint car and start racing it. Well, my grandpa builds the roll cage for it. So he builds the roll cage out of black pipe that he got off a job site. Just a crappy, front hoop, rear hoop, and two rails that run it. And if I could find the pictures, like in the family album, there's pictures of it. Anyway, my dad crashed his car at Granite City on the half mile. And when he did that, the roll cage collapsed on him. The roll cage collapsed because it was a piece of crap anyway. It
Yeah.
collapsed. It pinned him against the steering wheel. They get my dad out of the car, and they haul him off to the Granite City Hospital, which Granite City Hospital is just 2 or 3 miles down from the track. And I'll never forget my dad and my grandpa telling me this story one day, that it was a Sunday night, and my grandpa had to go to work the next day. So he drives down to the hospital. They get the car put on the trailer and drives down to the hospital and says, "Here, I'm here to pick up George," or whatever. And they figured out, there's the guy that crashed the race car, and the lady at the desk says, "Sir, he's got a broken back. He's not leaving today." So my grandpa, and this is the kind of guy he was, he hands the lady $40 and says, "Here, when he gets out, give him this $40. Tell him to get a bus ticket home. I got to get back to work." And he left. He left him in St. Louis, in Granite City, in the hospital, and drove back to work. And of course, when he got home, and my mom found out, like, she come unglued, But that's the kind of person my grandpa was. Hey, I can't do nothing else here. I'm going. So, but my dad raced sprint cars, and when he got hurt, he couldn't drive anymore. So he lived a normal life after that. But the doctor said, with your back injuries, it's a bad idea. And
Yeah.
he owned a sprint car. Dean Shirley drove for him for a while. Phil Howe, Jimmy Mohan, Chuck Amati. And I got another story about my grandpa one day. But Chuck Amati ran a couple of races for him. And eventually, 1980, my dad got rid of the sprint car stuff and bought a quarter midget for me and my brother, and we started racing quarter midgets around 1980 or something like that. And I just started racing from there. My grandpa built my quarter midget motors, so whenever he would do something, he was the kind of person, like, "I'm not going to do this unless you're here to watch and look." And so he taught me everything about building a motor when I was 8 or 9 years old. And he always told me, if you get it doesn't matter if it's a V8 or this one cylinder motor, if you get number one cylinder right, the rest of it falls into place. So taught me how to file rings, how to set a cam. If you didn't have a cam card, how to degree the cam in on the overlap and all this stuff. And so I had to learn everything when I was a little kid. And I didn't have, what I would consider a normal childhood. I don't know what a normal childhood is, but I know I didn't have one. When I go to school, and kids would, "Hey, we're having a baseball game," or something like that, they're like, I can't think of one time in my life. I got a kid that works for me, Dalton England. Him and his dad, they go to do stuff, and hockey games, and watch baseball games and stuff like that. And I can't think of any time in my childhood with me and my dad, throwing a ball back and forth to each other. Or man, I was probably 20 years old before I ever had a football in my hand. It just racing's all I did. That's it. And as I got older, I eventually got a midget when I was 15 years old. Like back in that era, in the late 80s, you didn't go run junior sprints and 600 micros and all that stuff wasn't available. You ran a
Yeah.
quarter midget until you were about 15, and then you got a midget or a sprint car or something. The what micros they had, which wasn't real big in my area. They had 250 cars that they'd run, and I think you had to be 16 to run one of those or 15. You didn't do it as a young kid. So um, yeah, I started racing a midget when I was 15. Didn't have any money. Would run a couple of times a year as we could afford it, and eventually, I kind of learned how to do race car stuff. I didn't have any money, so as I crashed my car, I'd learn how to fix it or build it myself. So that's kind of how it all worked out and how I got to where I am. Just a side effect of bad decisions and bad driving and no money, I guess.
So let's just, obviously, you said you had to learn.
Right.
I want to say, as people get to know you through this podcast and we talk about more things that are going to be more up to date now, welding has probably been the backbone of your career along with fabrication. Being a good welder isn't something you just read a book on and go plug in the welder and, hit the juice. Where did you first start your craft of welding, and how have you progressed through the years to understand the importance of a good weld versus a bad weld, different types of weld, different types of material? How did you get started in that?
So basically, like I said, it was my grandpa. He was kind of a backyard fabricator. He couldn't build anything. He wasn't. I would say the difference between me and him is we both could probably look at something and figure it out and make it, but I always look at something like how to fix it and make it look pristine. And my grandpa was, of the era where it looks close enough, don't worry about it, and just cobble something together, right? Like
Yeah.
he built a roll cage for my dad, right? But it wasn't necessarily a good quality one. So that's just the big difference there. But he taught me how to weld when I was, I don't know, 10 or 11 years old. Bought me a wire welder, and I remember the first thing, you get a wire welder, and then on the tip of the welder, it's got the little copper sleeve that surrounds the wire, and the gas
Yep.
comes out. And I remember it just pulled the trigger. Well, I didn't know if the copper needed to touch the metal or not. I'm like, does it need to touch? Does it just pull the trigger? Just pull the trigger. So eventually, I learned how to wire weld, and I think when I was about 12, he bought me a TIG welder, but it wasn't that simple. He he wouldn't let me he wouldn't let me TIG weld until I learned how to gas weld first. So he set me down with a bunch of different tips, oxyacetylene torch, a bunch of different tips, and a bunch of little rectangle pieces of metal, 1/8 inch thick, 16th thick, quarter-inch thick. And he made me learn all the tips, and how to gas weld first and how to make a nice bead doing that. And to this day, like it's something I want to revisit. I haven't fired up a torch and welded. It's probably been, I don't know, maybe I did it about 10 years ago, but he made me learn how to gas weld first and then started TIG welding. And it was two very different things to me, because it's, you know, gas weld, like once you get the heat set, you start slow and you just move on, but a TIG weld, you're always got a foot pedal. It's like driving a race car in the slick, you give it too much gas, it's bad. And if you ain't got enough gas, you're not taking off and doing good either. So I learned how to TIG weld when I was 12, but I didn't get good at it until later on in life. Uh, the TIG welder was at my grandpa's house. And by the time, like maybe Saturday, he would come pick me up or my parents would drive me out there, so I was 12 years old and go out there and I'd practice for an hour or so. And it just wasn't enough to get good at it. And
Was it something you enjoyed, or was it something you felt like you were being
I
required to
did like
do?
no, as a little kid, like I enjoyed, me and my brother Johnny, we would build model cars and stuff and customize them, cut the tops off and stuff like that. And honestly, like if we're being honest about life paths, I really wanted to be a car customizer or a custom painter before anything else. Um, and later on in life, I started out like probably my first side gig was painting helmets for people. But on the welding stuff of it, like by the time I got my driver's license, and I was 16 and I can drive to my grandpa's house and learn, I would say that's when I really started getting good. And because a lot of times, like I'd put a real crappy looking bead down, and then you just take a TIG welder and just go back over it until it looks pretty, which isn't the right way to do it, but it was all I knew at the time. And like I said, when I was 16, 17 years old, I was able to do it a lot more, do it on my schedule, and I could stay there for 3 or 4 hours, and I got pretty good at it by then. But
What would
when
you
I went
weld?
through,
Are you just welding some,
so so
round, quarter round, or what are you welding? You're
so a
practicing.
lot
Are
of
you
times,
making anything?
I did make some stuff, when I was a lot younger, 11 years old, 12 years old, and I was still racing quarter midgets. I made engine stands that you'd put a quarter midget motor, like a one cylinder Deco or Continental motor on, and I'd weld those up and sell them at the quarter midget track for like $25. And then by the time I was 16, of course I had a midget by then, so we had a local company that was a like an ironworks place. It was like a steel warehouse, and Louis Faring and his dad Bill Faring was a really good welder, and I learned a lot of stuff from Bill on the weekends. He was good at like aircraft stuff, magnesium and titanium and stuff like that, and he taught me basically all the old school tricks of doing things. So, so I'd get material, and Louis would give me stuff to make Nerf bars out of, or if I wanted to make a little, not necessarily a pit cart, but a tire rack for my trailer or something like that. I would do that. So, otherwise, like if I didn't have anything going on, I'd just take scrap metal, some square tubing, or and just butt it together and just learn how to fill the crack, and how to make it look pretty, and how to, as far as welding goes, I'd never in my life had any schooling on how to do it, or taken any courses or anything like that. Just man, it's funny. Like at Knoxville this year, I was talking to Brian Schnee, who's a tremendous fabricator, and we were just kind of talking about our backgrounds and stuff, and he's the same way. He's like, man, you give me a book and I'd probably fail the test, but I can do it in reality. We just have on the job training, like, right, no formal textbooks or anything. So
Yep.
like I said, I got decent enough at it where maybe in my early 20s, people were coming by and, hey, can you fix this for me, or can you weld that for me, and stuff like that. But
So in your
after
early
after
20s, did you have your own business by then, or
no
was
no
this just
so
side
so
gig stuff? Or
so I got out of high school, and when I got out of high school, my first job was in a body shop. My brother got me a job in a body shop, and we did bread trucks for Interstate Brands Corporation, which was butternut bread, sunbeam bread, Dolly Madison cakes, and we did them for the entire state of Illinois. And I don't know, there's 7, 8 people worked there, and the shop ran a couple of shifts. And because a lot of times, trucks would have to go back on route at 1 o'clock in the morning or something, and we did them for the entire state of Illinois. So my brother got me the job, and we'd paint blue and white, and that was it. You'd put a decal on it, and that was the only two colors in the shop, and if they wanted the bumpers touched up or the wheels, you'd hit them with some black paint and be done. But so I worked there for a bit, and like I said, that was my first official job. I didn't flip burgers or anything like that in high school, and eventually, like I did that for 2 years, and I was running the shop. I was a 19 or a 20-year-old kid, and I got 7 or 8 employees, and I got people calling, "Hey, my truck's not on route," and I remember one time I had the owner's son. I had to fire him one time. He's a 27-year-old kid, and like, man, that was tough. Like, people don't respect a young kid. Unfortunately, like, somehow I was the most responsible one there, so I ended up with the job. And man, people don't like some newbie or some high school kid telling them how to do it or what to do. But that's what I did for a while. I made really good money, and I just got tired of the headache of it. I was a kid, and I wanted to be a kid. So I
yeah,
remember I quit there, and I went to work at another body shop, Blandco, Tom Bland. And Tom Bland was probably one of the best people in my life, because he always encouraged me to go do something else, try it, and come back here, and you'll always have a job if you need it. And so I went to work for Tom Bland. And I think Tom started me at like 750 an hour or something. I mean, I went from making 50 grand a year to $18,000 a year. But I was happy. I was happy, and I didn't have any headaches to deal with. And I think I've worked for Tom 5 different times in my life. I went and tried things and moved back, and even if he didn't have work for me, he made sure I had a place. So um, yeah, it's not always a gravy train with biscuit wheels. You try things, it works out, and you live and learn, and build your resume, I guess.
Yeah. So now I think you also took a stint at doing some midget racing. Did you actually ever get on the road and try to be a race car driver, or was that just more of a hobby for you?
So that's what I wanted to do. That's what I wanted to do. But the money just wasn't there. And we're talking, I ran midgets from basically like 1988 or 89 until 1999. I think the last midget race I ran was the Summer Sizzle at 16th Street Speedway. And I never had everything I needed at the same time. Like the first car I had was an old J&J car, and it had a Chevy 2 motor, and it was actually, Keith and Rusty Coombs. It was one of their first cars, and had that thing, and I crashed it, and ended up got an Ellis midget, and it was a pretty nice car, but I didn't have a good motor. I still had a steel block Chevy 2 motor, and finally did upgrade and get power steering, and then I saved up enough money where I was going to get a nicer motor, and I crashed a car. See, I guess I crashed at Terre Haute and destroyed a car at Terre Haute, and or there goes my motor money. I need another car. So you buy another car, and eventually, like, when I get a good motor, I didn't have a good car. When I had a good car, I didn't have a good motor, and when I had a
Yep.
good motor, I didn't have a good car. So I never had anything that I needed, uh, but I still had fun doing it.
So obviously you got to support yourself to when you're trying to race through those times too. And tell us a little bit about some of the jobs. You told me something when we were talking just a little bit earlier about maybe painting some race cars or some other stuff like that.
Yep. So when I worked at Blandco here in Springfield, um, like I said, Tom Bland, he talked me into, I had an opportunity to go out and work for Dave Ellis out in Phoenix, and that really opened my eyes to. I'd never been in a race car manufacturing environment, and Dave was really popular at the time and
What was he
built a lot
building?
of cars.
I'm not familiar with
So,
that
so he
name.
built a lot of midgets and sprint cars, and at that time, like he built, like Paige Jones's midgets,
Oh, yep.
PJ
Okay.
Jones, Ronnie Schumann there in Phoenix, like he drove Ellis sprint cars, and it was just a popular thing, like non-wing stuff out on the West Coast.
Okay.
So they brought me in and gave me a little bit of money and a house to live in, and I learned how to build race cars, how to make blueprints, how to bend tubing. Man, there's times I'd sit on a mill all day, and I'd make torsion arms, and I'd make axle brackets and radius rod spuds, and Dave was a meticulous fabricator. Like when you cut a piece of tubing off and you notched it, you think, well, just clean it up in the belt sander and deburr it. No, like you deburr it on the inside and you scrape all the metal out of the. I mean, Dave was a craftsman, and so I lived out there for a while, and I got homesick, and I moved back home, and I come walking to Tom Bland's door, and hey, Tom, I need a job. Yep, come on in here, and Tom did a little bit of everything, auto body and commercial vehicles and stuff. So I'd be back painting Ryder trucks or semis, or putting a roof on a semi trailer that got decapitated or something. So
Yep.
so we did a little bit of everything there, and Tom's famous words was always make it look good and don't spend a lot of money on it. So you learn how to make stuff out of nothing. And in the meantime, like to help support my racing, I would paint helmets. I wanted to be, like I said, a custom painter more than anything, or a car customizer. And so I paint helmets and stuff for people. I think I'd get 200 or 250 bucks, which was a lot of money in the 90s to me. And it was tough. I was somewhat introverted. I was too shy to go up and introduce myself or business cards and stuff like that. I mean, in this day and era, like, I could post something on Twitter, and like the whole world sees it. And
Yep.
if I could have did what I did then with today's technology, like I'd probably be a helmet painter or something. But Just
Were you
didn't work out.
airbrushing? Just curious, airbrushing, or was it just
But yeah,
more?
no, it was custom stuff. You'd have,
Yeah,
like Fittipaldi squares where they're shaded. You got lines
yeah,
going
okay,
through it.
yeah,
And I mean, it wasn't, I just didn't paint it red and put a white star on it and call it a custom. I mean,
yeah,
it was nice work, and you'd shadow something, you'd put a little star, like sign painter starburst on it or something like that. So,
yeah.
but, it just wasn't enough money, um, to still go out and race the way I wanted to. So, and also like where we worked at Landco, we had a paint system there. They call it a ultrastatic paint system. And what it was is the paint was positively charged and a chassis was negatively charged. And with Maxim chassis in town, we would paint all the cars for, any car that left Maxim, that was really before powder coating was real popular or an option. We'd paint Workman orange, or we'd paint Steve Kinser's, red cars, or man, we paint everything, Tyler Walker's or
So
Greg Hodden.
tell me the paint code for the Jack Eldon and Jack Hodenschild Pennzoil Yellow.
So it's funny. I didn't know like you worked there or whatever, but yeah.
Yeah.
So I think, and oddly enough, we used to paint the cars for the Motter Brothers also,
Oh
and they
yeah.
were sponsored. They were sponsored by Sickens, and we painted them with PPG paint all the time. But the Jack Eldon car, it was 474. It was a yellow tint, a PPG yellow tint. We'd spray it with 474 yellow, and then when it got done, you spray a real light mist of white pearl on it, and it just gave it just a little bit of a sparkle. And then you put a red and a black pinstripe on it. And you send it down the road, and it was
That's
funny. One
awesome.
time we painted a bumper. Jerry Russell, I think, was working at Maxim at the time, and he brought this big angle iron bumper in, just massive piece of steel, and he needed it painted. It was like a metallic maroon color or something, and got it done. And I remember, well, bring it out to Maxim, and I went out to Maxim. And it was for Jack Hodenschild's motorhome, and I'll never forget. I'll never forget. It was the week that him and Sammy had gotten a fist fight or something. We're probably 1995, 1996, somewhere in that era, and him and Sammy had just gotten a fist fight. And I go out there to help him to unload this bumper, and he's like, "Will you help me put this thing on?" I'm looking. I got a Sammy shirt on, and they just got in a fist fight, like a couple days later or before. And I was like, I guess I don't have the right shirt on, do I? And he's like, "Hell with it, man. Just get down here, help me put this." So I helped you put the bumper on, and that's my Jack Hodenschild story. But I remember, another time, I remember a car come in from Maxim, and it was a kind of a hush hush deal, and we painted it a metallic, a deep metallic blue. And when they finally come and picked it up, they said that, and I don't know how many times Shots had ventured off of J&J cars, like he's ran J&Js for like life or longer. But I remember uh, we painted a Maxim for Shots. I painted it probably around 90, 96, 97 era, somewhere in there. Um, so yeah, I don't know how many times Donnie's ran a Maxim. Maybe a couple of times here, late this year. But prior to
Yeah.
that, like, yeah,
Yeah, and like I said, I know a guy that could probably ask him that, Flea, and I'm sure I will do that tomorrow on the phone with him. But because I do know he did finish out the year on Maxims pretty much.
at least so.
So
Yep,
Don did
yep.
get some races in Maxims this year, and like I said before that, the only thing I ever remembered him being in was a Gambler, which was way before the day. But he
Like the
switched to
start of their
J&J.
career, right?
Yeah. So so that's interesting that you actually painted a Maxim car for possibly Donnie Shots. We'll follow up on that and see what we can find
Yeah,
out.
yeah. Ask him and let me know. Let me know if he remembers it.
Definitely. Yep. So obviously, you've got to find a way to make a living, and tell me
Correct.
a little bit about. Obviously, you've been in the repair business for a while, but what are we missing that got you to the era of where you're at today?
So I leave Blanco and I go to work for another body shop in town, and it was a startup shop, and it was just basically me. I was a combination person, and we got the shop going, and everything was good, and hired more people, and then eventually, like, I became a shop manager again, and I absolutely hated it. There's six or eight people running around it, and to me, it's always easier. Like anytime I have somebody do something for me, I end up disappointed. And I don't know if that's it's just the vision I have in my head, or my standards or what. But uh, like I said, anytime I hire somebody, like it just does nothing but piss me off, because they don't see things the way I do, and it doesn't make it right or wrong. It's just maybe it's just one of my flaws or whatever. But I didn't want to be a production manager. I wanted to go back online. I wanted to go out there, but I was, I guess kind of valuable and making sure everybody else was in line. And it ended up, I went back to Blanco, worked there for a bit, and then I got hired by another shop. And I was a specialty guy at the next shop, worked there, and I worked on a car liner all day. And I just, somebody brings in a minivan, and the front fenders push back in the third row seating, and it's there it is, and you got 112 hours to take and pull all this stuff and replace the front, subfloors, and put an A pillar in it, and core support and all this stuff, and oh yeah, you got to take the motor out in the transmission and do all this stuff here to put it back together too. So I did
Yeah.
that, and did really good there. And I got a good friend of mine, Jim Mahan, and Jim Mahan is honestly who's responsible for the path that I'm in right now. Um, Jim Mahan was made fiberglass for everybody. He made Jack Elam's fiberglass. He made Stealth for John Godfrey.
Yep.
Factor One. He made stuff for everybody. And Jim bought a 600 micro, and since he did all the fiberglass work for Stealth, I think they gave him one, and it was honestly it was a piece of shit car, and they were trying to hire people to get that micro program going, and he conned me in to, hey, why don't you go over here and build a car? They need somebody. So he made the connection for me, and I think when they hired me in, it would have been like 1999 or something like that. They hired me in, and we agreed on a price or whatever, and they said, okay, well, we'll get with you, in like a couple of weeks and figure out how to get you moved over here. And at that point in my life, I still wasn't sure if I knew how to build a race car or not, but like, I don't know. I give it a try. Like, it can't be that bad. There's three people couldn't do it already, so it can't be that bad. Um, so anyway, they hem-hawed around, and they hired somebody else, and then maybe a month or two later, it didn't work out, and they called me back, and hey, we're interested. We want you. And I'm like, at that point, I was over it, and I think I shot them another number that was like 20 or $25,000 more, which was just stupid,
Yeah.
and they took it. So I had to go in and tell my boss, like, put my 2 weeks in. I'm going to move to Indianapolis. And I remember, John Conlon, who I worked for at that time at Elite Auto Body. He said, "Well, just finish up what you're doing today, and just get out of here." And he wasn't being mean about it, but he knew I had other things I needed to do, and the sooner they can get somebody else to fill my shoes, it just kind of sped everything up, and
Yep.
so I went to Indianapolis immediately. Found me a place to live, and then I remember I was working on a Porsche at work, and John called me back one day and said, "Hey, the parts showed up for that Porsche. Can you come back in and finish it up for a day?" So I did that, and moved to Indianapolis, and started building micros. And I remember I walked in there, and basically, well, we have these parts, and this here's what we have to do. And I'm like, I don't want to work around any of this. You're not going to tell me, to use all this stuff here, because obviously nobody else can make it work. If I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it with a clean slate. I'm going to do it my way, and that's what I did. And so I designed a car, built it, and in 30 days, I had the first car put together in a month. And I remember because I didn't have any friends in Indianapolis, I just worked nonstop through the weekends and everything. And the guy that hired me, David Duncan, uh, we'd go have dinner and stuff like that. And that was really the only interaction I had with people, for that period of time. And I remember I got the car done, and I told David, I said, I'm going to take a couple of days off. I'm going to go back home and see my family, my parents or whatever in Illinois, and I'm going to race this car. And I said, I'm going to come back here Monday. We're going to run 2 nights. I'm going to come back here Monday with a trophy for you. And it ended up we won the very first night out at Jacksonville Speedway, and then we won the second night out at Macon Speedway. And so I was able to come back on Monday, and I had two trophies. And honestly, David David come over to watch the races, and it was kind of a proud moment for me. That was the first time I'd ever had success doing something that I was paid for. I mean, I built a race car at one. I built it from nothing, and like I said, it was a proud moment for me.
I'm going
And
to
and
ask
I
probably an obvious question here that I'm probably missing, but I just want to make sure. Not only did you build it, you drove it.
no, I did not drive it. Aaron Andersgevich drove the car. By this time, we're in early 2000s now, and I'm basically done racing
Okay.
for the rest of my life. I did run, like through the early 2000s. I ran some micros. I ran dirt late model a couple of times. I ran a wing sprint car once for actually a guy that works for me. And a funny story about that was I went out there in a hot lap, and I think this was around maybe 2014, 2015. I went out there in hot laps, and man, it was absolutely ugly. It'd been several years since I hopped in the car, and I told Jim, like, I don't want to drive it anyway. Why don't you drive it and I'll work on it? Because at that time I was a better mechanic than I was a
Yeah.
driver. And he said, no, 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 just drive it. So we went out there and hot lapped, and man, it was ugly, Lanny. It was horrible. And I come back in and I'm like, man, what this is this is bad, and of course, at that time, like, people know who you are walking around the track and stuff like this. Like, man, this is a horrible idea. So I kind of got my shit together, and we went out and ran the heat race, and I won the heat race by like a straightaway. And I'm like, man, I got it figured out now. Me and Jim were both like fist pumping and high fiving and stuff. And the reason I was running the car was Jim's son couldn't make it there to race that night. He got stuck at work or something.
Yeah.
And so I was starting front row inside for the feature. I'm starting on the pole, and it's mine to lose. And about 5 minutes before the feature, Jim's son shows up, and I got fired. So I so I won the heat race, started on the pole for the feature, and I got fired before I ever got to go out. Yeah.
So your last race you never even got to run the feature on. So let's get you're in Indy building micros, and what years are we looking at for that?
Late 1999, all the way through 2000, and I think I left there in early 2001, like March of 2001. I left there, and basically David Duncan, who hired me, um, he was an attorney for a parent company, and just basically David Duncan, what he was good at is getting the right people in place, I guess. And so I had a new group of bosses, and they thought I made too much money, so they wanted to cut my salary. They wanted to cut my salary, I think, by like $36,000 a year, and I was like, no, ain't gonna happen. So I left there and tried to get a job in Indianapolis. I tried to get the job with Bob over at Competition Welding, and he was just kind of part time and stuff, and really couldn't afford me. And I went and seen Bob East, and Bob East could give me a job, but it wasn't. I didn't need to make what I needed, what I was making, but I needed something, more than $8 an hour. And it just I tried at Chip Ganassi's and tried to be a welder there. And the funny thing was like they wouldn't hire me, but a kid that I trained to weld, Jason Holt. Uh, 2 months after I moved back to Illinois, they hired Jason, who worked for me, and Jason didn't really know how to weld, and they hired him, and he was like their head welder for a while. So like, we always joked about that. But I come back home, and I didn't have any money, and there was a garage behind, um, where my grandparents lived. That was I kind of kept my race cars there when I raced, and I had a welder and a lathe and tubing notcher and stuff like that. And I had a tubing bender, and like, man, I went to work put an application in for a local body shop in like March 2001. Guy needed a painter, and I went over there and applied, and we worked everything out. And I'm like, man, I'll just go back to body work again. And when we got the interview, and he's like, okay, cool. And I was like, man, before we go, one more thing, I got to ask you something. How do you feel about me showing up a little bit late every day? Like, I'm not a morning person. I'll be there, might be like 8:15 when I get there. And Roger said, man, that's the problem. We expect everybody to be here on time. And yeah, that's a problem. Got up and I shook his hand. I said, well, I appreciate your time, and I left. Like, man, I didn't, because the way life had worked out, like, man, I didn't want to work for anybody else anymore. Like, man, I just didn't feel like I can. We had different visions, or I couldn't trust you. If you work for somebody, and your destiny's kind of out of your hands at that point.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I went and I had like, I think I had $1,900 to my name is what I had, and I got on the phone and called Jorgensen Steel over in Indianapolis, the guy that I used to deal with, and I think his name was Mike Patrick. And I called Mike Patrick and I said, hey, I want to start a business in Illinois. And he couldn't sell me tubing from Indianapolis, but they had a St. Louis distribution center, and he went and made the phone call and got me set up on good buddy pricing and all that. And I bought $880 worth of tubing, and I like, man, I'll figure it out. I didn't have any money. I moved in with an ex girlfriend, and
You said you
figured if
had
I
like
can,
$1,800 to your name, and you basically spent half of it just
I,
to
I
gamble on
spent half of
yourself.
my net worth to start a
Yeah.
business, and my goal was I needed to make $50 a day to figure out how to pay. By that time, I had phone bill and truck payment and truck insurance, and I needed $1,500 a month or whatever. So 30 days in a month, $50 a day.
Yep.
So that was my goal. And I remember Irv Gayet, who's a good friend of mine right now. Like Irv had some 600 cars, and he needed bumpers and air cars built for those. So I did that. And Jim Weisard brought over some cars and had me modify them and change some stuff. And they were my first two customers. And in fact, before I quit working in Indianapolis, Jim Weisard was coming over to buy two new cars. And when I told him, like, yeah, Jim, I quit and come back home, he's like, well, I ain't buying none of that stuff. Then I'll just fix my car. So that got me started. So now
Did, did
I
he
guess I'm a
bring
professional
those
fabricator
cars?
now.
Yeah. Did he bring the cars to you then? That he was, he was gonna buy two, but he fixed the other ones. He happened to bring those
He
over for you to dial them in.
he did. He brought them over, and he had two daughters that were racing, and as they were growing, they needed the pedals moved and seats raised and whatever else. So we did that there and got them modified and stuff like that. And eventually, I did build a couple of new cars for Jim. So I built some micros for a while, like just my own design.
Would that be the Ripper chassis by any chance?
Nope. So at that time, we just called everything like the business. My name of my business right now is Millennium Components, and since it was so close, like I started a business, I guess like late 1999 or 2000. I got set up to where I can do business because I built some oddball quarter midgets before I even moved to Indianapolis. And at that time, it was the year 2000, Y2K, right? So everything was about the millennium.
Yeah.
And for lack of any creativity, we just come up with Millennium Components.
Well,
And so that's what I named my business. That's what it's still today. And then the Ripper thing come along. I don't know, maybe 2019. And how the Ripper thing came about was I've always went by Flea ever since I was a little kid. I never liked my real name, and I went by Flea. And back in I think 2005, 2006, somewhere in there, I run a couple of dirt late model races. And at that time, like you didn't have Twitter. Like text messaging was just kind of starting out, right? So
yeah.
so for race results, they would post everything in Speed Sport. You'd wait, Tuesday, Wednesday when your Speed Sport showed up. And you read the results. And I couldn't have any of my open wheel friends know that I ran a late model, and I went over to the dark side. So I signed in as Rip Jetson from Corn Belt, Iowa, and that
Okay.
so I just went by Rip Jetson, just kind of made a fake name, and I guess like my Twitter handle and stuff, it's Rip Jetson or whatever. So that's just, I don't know, just some people just call me Ripper after that. So yeah,
That's
that's kind of how that started. It was just a
that's
little
funny.
bit of.
Have you ever heard the story about Jason Sides? And I know you know Jason because I was actually on the phone with him for a while today, and I said, "Do you know Flea Ruzik at all?" He's like, "Oh, I love Flea." And back when the Outlaws first had this deal where you could only race so many races off their schedule, there was a early race down in Alabama or Texas somewhere. It was a 360 race. They really wanted to go to it, and Jason went there, and he signed in as Manny Moore. Have you ever heard this one?
I haven't heard this story. No.
Yeah, he signed in as Manny Moore. And then eventually I think World Outlaws caught wind of it or so. I don't remember how it went down, but I was asked, everybody wondered, well, where'd you come up with that name? He says, well, back in the day, they used to put all the flyers up and all these towns outlaws were coming to. Sammy Swindell, Doug Wolfgang, Steve Kinzer, and many more. So he said,
That way,
I guess
he was
I'm
the
the
bottom
many
on the
more.
flyer.
Yep.
Yeah.
I never got my name on there, so I was the many more part.
I hadn't heard that one at all.
Yeah. So anyway, so pretty much same thing you did there. And let's just put a shameless plug out there because Flea, your Twitter handle is at RipJetson9, right?
9, yeah.
Yep.
And nine was my family number. My dad was number 9, and I always raced as 9 also. And then later on in life, when I had my own race cars, like I finally got to the point where I didn't care what the number was too much, you know.
As long as you're racing, yeah.
Yeah. We have 1s, we have 21s, we have, whatever. It just doesn't matter.
Yeah. So what I want to kind of get into here, first of all, is a couple things. People that follow you on Twitter, and that's where, honestly, without social media, I wouldn't know who you are today. But I took an interest to you many years ago, just because of the cool stuff that you do. And people, and you've really opened up, I think, about a lot of things that you've done in your life. Obviously, you I think you're an avid, or you love the challenge of playing guitar, that I assume you're self-taught on.
I can't read music.
Okay.
If I can't figure it out my
the
ear,
other
I
thing
can't
that
out.
really strikes me as cool and as a good guy is the love you have for your family. And everything always survives the course of time, but especially with your mom, Rose, who looks like an amazing woman that you go out of your way to get home for almost on every weekend. Because any of the regular followers on your Twitter know that Monday night is date night with mom.
That's right. We just finished that up. Yes.
Yeah. I would just say we're recording this on Monday night. So I thought, man, after I saw that tweet, I'm like, man, and he's the one that said 7:00 Monday night. So I think we're still on. But your family means a lot to you, your mom, and some other direct people in your life. And obviously just talk a little bit about the importance of that and having those relationships.
So like I said, when I grew up, my dad worked road construction. He run an asphalt crew, and he wasn't around much, not that, like I had bad parents. Like I had extremely good parents, my dad and my mom. But my dad ran an asphalt crew. So in the summertime, he'd leave home at like 5 in the morning. And, like here in the Midwest, like you'd lay asphalt until 7, 8 o'clock at night. My dad would come home and just be spent, and, later on in life, he was a job boss. So he still had to be gone. He didn't come home filthy dirty, later on in life, but he still had to be gone. And as a kid, when I was racing quarter midgets, if I wanted to go race, my dad might get off work like on, in July or August, at 2 o'clock in the afternoon on a Saturday. So I had to make sure my car was ready. Even, if I was 10, 11 years old, I had to make sure my car was ready. Everything was good. The trailer was loaded up, and he'd come home just in time to hop in the truck and drive it to the track. So, so that was that. Like I said, my dad and I didn't get to spend a whole lot of time together. And as I got older in life, my mom sometimes would make sure she'd stay at the races with me and find somebody to take care of my car, push it off or whatever until my dad could show up. And like I said, later on in life, as I got older, my mom and I, we couldn't get along. And like I said, but she was a great mom, but there was a lot of times like, especially like after I started my business, like in my mid 20s, and I'm 53 now, 52. Yeah, 52. She always told me like you can't make a living working on race cars. You can't do that. You need to get a career figured out. And man, we'd butt heads over stuff, and I think it's silly now, but there was times we didn't talk for a couple of weeks at a time or something. And I told you earlier, like when later on in life, when her memory was getting bad, say 5 or 6 years ago, my dad would tell me, hey, your mom's memory's getting bad and stuff. And I called my mom's doctor and had a conversation. I said, hey, this is Rose's son, and here's what I'm noticing: her memory's slipping a little bit and stuff like that. And if I can I'd like to make an appointment and get her there. And if I do that, will you evaluate her and see what we're doing? And she got pissed off, and come here, mom. We're actually hold on,
Oh
Lanny.
yeah,
You got
bring
a
her in.
surprise here.
Absolutely. Heck yeah.
Come here. Stand over here. Say hi to Lanny.
We're gonna.
Hi, Lanny. How are you?
Hey, good. How are you doing, Rose?
So she can't hear you because it's going to my ear, but he wants to know how you're doing.
Oh yeah,
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm doing real good. We were actually just talking about you and what a great lady you are, and I heard you guys went on a great supper date tonight.
Hold on. Let me put an earbud in her ear.
Yeah, we'll do
Okay,
that.
now.
All right, we were just talking about you and going out for dinner tonight with your son and all the good times you guys have.
Oh yeah, I do it all.
Yeah, I hear you're real busy. That's for sure.
I like to play the slots too.
Well, I hope you win because I don't usually have very good luck with those.
Well, I win once in a while.
Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
spend what I can't afford to, so it's okay.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, I appreciate you popping in and giving us a quick wave.
I'm just waking up. I'm going to get ready and go to my room, take a shower, and lay down and watch TV for the night, fall asleep, and wake up in the morning, start over.
That sounds like a great plan to me. That's for sure.
Love you.
Okay.
All right,
But
that's awesome.
yeah,
That's awesome. That is. I love it. I love it. I love it. And that,
like I said, there was a lot of times like we just couldn't get along. And I remember, when I wanted to make that appointment, the doctor said, no, you can't do that. And so I told her, like, man, this is what we need to get done. We need to, try to get your memory checked or whatever. And man, she flew off the handle, and we didn't talk for a couple of months over it. So it was just the way we kind of operated. We just kind of avoid each other, or I would avoid, being around her, just because we couldn't get along, and I didn't want to be that way. And later on in life, my dad has some heart problems, and I remember, a couple of weeks before he passed away, he told me that, I know you and your mom's not going to be able to get along long term, and just make sure she's taken care of. Go see her once a month or something like that, and just don't leave her. You just don't leave her, because you guys can't get along. Like just and my dad passed away like 2 weeks after that. So you know, um, I told my dad I'd take care of her. So that's it. So in the scheme of things, like it was hard for me to manage while I was on the road. Racing, 60, 70 nights a year, and it took me a while to figure it out. And eventually I stopped racing, and man, it was at that time, there's 4 or 5 midgets on the road, and I was building a non-wing car and a wing car, and you get commitments with sponsors and drivers and people, and it was a huge wheel to stop. Like once you got it stopped, then I'm sitting here at home, and I've never lived at home. Like for 15 years or so, I've been out on the road racing or wrenching cars and stuff, and so it was a learning process for me
Just a quick
to figure
question
out.
for you, Flea. Just a
Yep.
quick question. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but just for clarity for me and maybe the listeners too, you were out full time on the road, 60 to 70 races with a team of 5 midgets. Just quickly, was that your team that you had built, or were you working for somebody else?
So originally I started out working for Brad Loyette, and did that for a couple of years, and then took care of Zach Dom's midgets for a couple of years. And Dom, Loyette, they run pavement midgets, pavement sprint car, or pavement midgets, dirt midgets, and then we did a non-wing sprint car as well. And then with Dom, we did midgets and silver crown cars, and did that for a couple of years. And then eventually, I worked for a couple of oddball people, not that they were oddball, but
Yeah.
just for filler work. And I ended up working for Kenny Brown around I don't know, maybe 2014, 2015. And then out of necessity, we started building our own race cars. So I started building Boss chassis, and we built 239 of those cars, and they were all sold through, KBR Performance. And, through that, I worked with all kinds of people, Tucker Klossmeyer and Darren Hagen and Kevin Thomas Jr. and Dave Darland. And, we had all kinds of people that sat in the cars and drove them. And Logan Stevie, I took care of Logan Stevie's stuff his rookie year of midgets, and we won a
Okay. Yeah.
championship with Logan. And then, probably, once I lost Logan to Keith Coons, I just I was kind of fed up. Like it seemed like the Toyota deal. They kind of dictated, that they wasn't going to give me money to run people on, because Keith was their factory team or whatever. So
Yep.
you can work on something and invest time in something, and racing's just that way. It's nobody's fault. It's just the landscape that it is. People steal your drivers or stuff like that. So it's just life, and I wanted to manage something my own. So me and Steve Reynolds decided to build a racing team ourselves and put a bunch of cars together, and yeah, I think that at one time, I had like I think 7 midgets sitting there, and we'd throw 3 or 4 of them in a trailer, and there was a couple of nights we raced 4 cars, but again, like I didn't have a big staff of people. When I'd go out and drag 4 cars home, on Monday, I unloaded it and I washed 4 cars, and then once I got them clean and everything was good, I popped the valve covers off and stuff, and I did motor maintenance on 4 cars.
Yeah.
And I'd clean the trailer out, and I'd stock the toter home, and make sure it had propane in it, and the refrigerator was good, and we had fresh water, and the shitter was dumped, and all this stuff. Like um, I did it myself, and it was at times like it become overwhelming. It was fun, it's fun, and I was younger, I could do it, but man, it was a lot of work, and I ain't boozing about it. I mean, it just I was doing something, but I'd get up at 10 o'clock in the morning, and I'd come rolling in home at 2 o'clock in the morning, putting in,
Yeah.
18-hour days or something.
Yeah.
So,
Okay, so so that's cool. So I just appreciate you doing that, because I wasn't even sure on that part. But getting back to taking care of your mom, and your dad had unfortunately passed away, and you were sharing with us how you got to where you're at today.
yep. So I'll give you a quick Jason side story too. So I was at the BC 39, and I believe it would have been 2022 is when it was, August of 2022. And I had Zach Beach, an IndyCar driver, running for me, and come back in from hot laps, on the race night or whatever, and everybody in my family had tried to call me on my phone. I'm like, man, this ain't good. And my dad had went in for just a routine checkup, and everything was fine. And then all of a sudden, he, had cardiac arrest, and it was bad. And then, I had an aneurysm, and everything just went off the rails, and that was it. And you know, they said they could keep him on life support, until I made it home. And I thought about it, and I'm like, me and my dad just seen each other, 2 days ago, and we were in a good place. The last thing, right, wrong, or whatever, the last thing I want to do is just go home and participate in that or whatever, and see the bad news. So I stayed on the road racing, and he passed away the next morning, and I left Indianapolis, and we had 2 nights in Peebly, Missouri, which would have been like the Ironman race. And I remember I made it to Peebly, and I got there, and Jason Sides come and found me, and he just gave me a big bear hug. I don't know how he knew what had happened, because none of it had been made public or anything. But I have a feeling like one of my friends, Sean Wood, made us told him or something. But yeah, Sides come over, give me a big bear hug, and as far as I'm concerned, that day, like, we bonded. Just 2 people that just respect for each other and cared for each other, even though we're not real close.
Yeah.
And Sides and I, we've become closer, since then. But yeah, so I just kept racing for a little bit, and finally realized the job I had ahead of me, and figured out how to slow it down so I can manage things, and keep my word to my dad. I told him I'd take care of it, and that's what I'm trying to do.
Yeah, and just huge kudos to you, knowing knowing that as we all grow older, as your mom grows older, with the challenges she faces on a daily basis, that you're there by your side as much as you can be. So I just think that's really cool, and a lot of people don't know that about you, and those that follow, they probably do, but it's really cool. So you fix probably, I don't know, a couple hundred cars a year, maybe now. That's pretty much that's we're kind of caught up to where you're at with your business now, right? Which
Yep.
is I don't even know. I forgot the name you already told me. I was
Millennium Components, but we build a lot of different stuff. I think we build maybe it's like 12 different brands of cars that people don't know we build. We build some outlaw cars that get sold under a couple of different names. We build some 600s that get sold under a couple of different names. We build Ripper midgets. We'll build a Ripper sprint car. We'll build a Boss midget. Um, we actually would build some Spike midgets for some people that just want them built. With the way we build them. It doesn't mean anybody does anything wrong, but there's just hey, I want this style of car and I want you to build it. So we build
yeah.
you know some knockoff cars, I guess you'd say, just because people want us to fabricate them and put them together.
Yeah. So when you say we, tell me a little bit about your business. Is it? I assume there's more than just you working there now. You
So
obviously
so
must.
so Jim Howard's been with me for about 10 years, maybe 11 years, and how that worked out is he needed a job for a couple of weeks, and that was 10 or 11 years ago. And then Dalton England works full time there, and then Tom Coe's a part timer, but he's there pretty much every day. Um, and we build between micros and midgets and sprint cars. We probably build maybe 40 new cars a year. And the repair stuff, I hate building new cars. Like the repetitiveness just drives me nuts. And so I do all the repairs. I'll make everything straight and get it close, and we probably repair, man, it's probably up to 350 or more cars a year. So yeah, I specialize in crashed race cars. Some people look at brand new race cars every day, and I look at everything that's just been just mangled and tore up, and that's my specialty, is just crashed race cars. And I like
And
it for the challenge. I like it for the challenge. I like understanding, the stuff of it. I like understanding and figuring out why something come apart and how we can hold it together and how to make it better. And like when I'm sitting at home, I don't watch like just normal movies and stuff like that. I sit there all day long or all night, and I watch air disasters or modern marvels or engineering disasters or Mayday or fatal engineering. I mean, I watch all those programs, and I don't care if it's a plane crashing or a bridge that broke. And I get off on like mysteries, like Malaysian air flight that disappeared, or the sinking of the Edmund Fitzgerald and stuff like that. Like
yep.
anytime there's any new information, like, man, I want to understand everything about I guess stuff that's unsolvable, or like the UPS plane crash right now, and you go all the way back to flight 191 in O'Hare, when the motor left the left wing on it, in 79. Like, man, what's the similarities here? What can be learned? I mean, I just like learning that stuff and trying to figure it out. I like the challenge of it.
For people that might be listening here and don't follow you, first of all, I want to encourage them to, because it's educational, it's entertainment, and it's just good, wholesome life that you share on your Twitter feed. But I want to talk a little bit about, you said when you watch stuff, you watch this. Well, when you watch a dirt track race from the confines of your house or your shop, you obviously watch them a little bit different than a lot of us, because one thing I've noticed lately, and I don't think that you're wasting anybody's time, but you're a huge supporter of the safety side and the safety aspect of, especially the sprint cars, the winged cars, even though you specialize in midgets and non-wing stuff. I know, and I think you've taken a liking to the winged stuff the last couple of years.
Something
Just
different.
because, who gets to build a sprint car for Sammy Swindell with your engineering background or type mind and his both? I think if you guys could race 60 nights a year, that thing would probably win some races. But I want to talk about the safety aspect because I see it's been a big talking point the last couple weeks, and even just this weekend. I saw one of your tweets just today where Jeannie Butler texted you about the way a seat and some seat belts were mounted. About you were talking about some lightning sprints out in California with cage supports and things like that. And what is it about you that draws that to you?
I think, like when I was younger, like there's a lot of people that didn't necessarily give me the time of day. I wasn't accomplished or anything, and maybe I wasn't worthy of time or whatever. And that's just another dumb kid. And like sometimes you don't like that feeling. And as I've come up, and there were a lot of people that helped me and gave me opportunities, so I never forget that. And if I can see something that can help somebody else out, like I try to, because there was some really good people that did give me a chance. So in their honor, I want to keep that moving forward. And like maybe I see things that other people don't, and I like to pass that information, for the good of the sport. It ain't trying to be, an attention grab or anything like that. I mean, if I wanted to get attention or something, I could build a dollhouse or paint something or whatever. There's all kinds of things I could do for attention. But I want to do it for maybe somebody that doesn't have the same opportunities that I've had. So I want to do it so they have their best chance of, survival or success, or, like back when I'd win races, I used to post my winning setups on the internet. I would, hey, this is, if you want to know what it takes to beat Keith Kunz, here it is right here. This is what I used to beat Keith Kunz tonight. And, maybe this gives people a little bit of hope. So that's kind of why I do stuff like that, just trying to be a decent human.
All right. So, and on that, Flea, I was scrolling your Twitter stuff here the other day, and I saw it in a couple different places. And referring to the drivers when it comes to the safety side of it, a quote that I have seen you say a couple different times are, "You are responsible for your own safety. No one really gives a shit about you." Now, that's not saying that people don't care about them. When it comes to the racing side of the race, and you're getting in the race car,
Yep.
you're the only one that's sitting behind the wheel. You're the only one that's sitting in that cage. And even though your mechanics, your crew chiefs, the race stewards, the pit officials, they've done their job. They've got their tag on the car that said it passed. But what can you continue to do to make your car safer? And I think those are the things you're always looking at.
Right. One thing I look at is, safety. Like ultimately, safety is on the end user. You buy a car and you think, you buy everything that you're supposed to have. And I bought it from a trusted manufacturer and stuff. And pretty much everybody does a really good job. I don't think anybody tries to put out a piece of shit, and but if the throttle spring falls off your injection, that's on you. Or like just this morning I posted, or this afternoon, Jeannie Butler texted me and said, "Hey, look at Dane Culver's seat belts. They didn't go over the shoulder bar. They basically just left, and they just went straight over his shoulder. So there's nothing to hold you from going forward in the car." And so I got to looking through that stuff at about lunchtime, and I called Jeannie and I said, "Man, Jeannie, you're right." And she said, "I thought I was." And I'm like, "What was you watching this thing on a 200-inch TV? Because it's
Yeah.
something I wouldn't notice. Okay, it's something I wouldn't notice, but I notice, tubes bent and stuff like that, because that's what my eyes trained to see." And same with Jeannie. Jeannie said, "Well, that's what I look for, And we kind of laughed about it. We're both trained to look at different aspects of things. And so I posted the pictures on Twitter, uh, and I found out that they went to a backup car. I didn't know that in the program. It's hard for me to stay focused and watch races, at home, but they went to a backup car, and that would explain it. Like if they had to switch seats or something like that, put it in a backup car, because we've all had to do that before. And then they didn't get the shoulder harnesses over the shoulder bar. They just ran them up from like the fuel tank bar that was mounted, and they just went straight up over your shoulders. And thankfully he didn't get hurt, any worse than he was, because that happened to Brad Lloyd. I remember back in, oh man, me and Mike Hess, I think we was talking about that today, and it was like 2007 or 2008 at Knoxville, and he almost flew out of the car. His arm, he went flying out of the car far enough that his arm landed up on the header of the motor and put pretty good burns on his arm over something like that. So little oversights really can be a bad deal. And I post stuff out there, and I'm a firm believer. Like I can tell you something, and it might piss you off, and it might hurt your feelings. But I've never seen anybody with hurt feelings that needed to ride around in a wheelchair. Like hurt feelings
No.
don't require a wheelchair, but a bad decision or being a dumbass absolutely could require a wheelchair.
Yeah.
Something else, like to go a little bit further, and people, will say, and I don't know if there's any truth to this or not, but racetracks need to upgrade this, and series need to do that, and it might not be a popular opinion, but some racetracks are operating, like you go back to the 70s or something, Lanny, and you wanted to open a racetrack, you'd build a racetrack and you'd open it up. You didn't need a food license, you didn't need a liquor license, you didn't need all these different parking spots and his and hers restrooms, and all this insurance, and the stairs have to meet code. I mean, I couldn't imagine what it would cost to open a door on a racetrack today, as opposed to what it would cost in 1960. Because in
Oh
1960
yeah.
you didn't need all this bullshit to regulations and stuff. And maybe it's good, maybe it's bad or whatever, but the truth is it costs a lot of money. And if you do preventative maintenance, and you spend $100,000 on preventative maintenance at your track to make everything safer, which maybe a lot of people would I think most promoters would do the right thing. But to spend $100,000 to upgrade it comes out of their pocket.
Yeah.
Okay. If somebody gets hurt, it comes out of an insurance company's pocket. The insurance
Yeah.
company, they've already paid the insurance anyway for that night at the track. So that's a cost of doing business already. And maybe I'm looking at it wrong, but yeah, like I said, preventative maintenance is expensive on the series or promoters and stuff like that. And the other end of it, which sadly just falls on an insurance company. So I don't know. I don't know if there's incentives to do the right thing or not. Like I said, I don't think anybody intentionally tries to do the wrong thing. It's just sometimes doing the right thing it's expensive.
Yeah. There's another hot topic that I'm hoping maybe you can explain to us real quick. This might not be one you can, because I'm going to ask you to explain to it like we're 6 years old. But the sanctioning bodies, it doesn't matter if it's World of Outlaws, High Limit, Knoxville Raceway, Eldora Raceway, Williams Grove. They have a set of rules, and they're improving vastly with their tubing thicknesses, their policing of tubing thicknesses, and where certain pieces and how they need to go together. And I think that's something that I consider you a very knowledgeable and successful person that understands this with that engineering type mind that you have. I've seen, as I followed you, you've done many test dumps with tubing that's been built to a scale, things along those lines. Have you ever reached out to visit with those folks, or is there any communication? Is there things that make you want to get involved, or is it hard to do that because of possible liability, that might come with that, or what's that look like? Explain some of that stuff to us real quick.
So I don't know how
Real
it
quick.
happens.
Yeah.
I don't know how it happens on the other end of the phone. I know how it happens on my end of the phone. And of course, when I post something on Twitter, it's there for the whole world to see, you know,
Yeah.
and I try to explain, you know, my points of view and, you know, like, you know, the people, whoever runs the Triple X Twitter account the other day, you know, we were having discussions or disputes or whatever about tubing and, you know, yield points and tensile strengths and stuff like that. And we differ, right? And, you know, in the scheme of things, like, you know, you can test stuff in a laboratory and first off, like I applaud them because they have an open discussion with me on Twitter. So like to me, it takes balls to do that. It doesn't
Yep.
matter what side of the fence you're on. And there's not many people, you know, car builders, and I don't know if it's you know they don't want to post something, you know, for assumption of liability or who knows, you know, but here's the deal, you know, you can test all this stuff in a lab, and you can look at reports and everything, and you know what my lab is, Lanny? It's my shop where I look at 300 plus race cars a year. Some people specialize in building new cars, you know, and they knock, you know, 400 brand new cars out a year, and that's what they look at
Yep.
is new cars in the manufacturing process. I look at, and I'm in a fortunate situation where, you know, say if you bought a Maxim and you needed a front clip foot on it, you take it back to Maxim, you know, and Dan would take care of you, or you know, if you went to J&J, you know, Jack, or you know, Russell Minton out at RPM Chassis, you know, Russell and I talk a fair amount or whatever, you know, and they kind of take care of their own cars and stuff like that, and uh, I fix everybody's stuff. You know, I can look at anything and go, hey man, this tubing's wrong or this didn't act right, you know, and people will show me videos of the crashes and I'm in a fortunate situation. Like I can call some of the video people and say, hey, can you break this down to a slower frame rate so I can study it or look at it? Like I said, my brain works that I wanna understand the mystery of it. And I know you can't make the world perfect. It's just impossible. You know, you cannot fix every scenario, and there's just you know, there's a cost of doing business on some of the safety stuff. You know, like what fixes one doesn't necessarily help on the other. But personally, like over the years, when I see tubing or cars that crash and stuff, like this isn't right. This shouldn't have come apart like this. I would cut samples out and I send them off to get tested, whether it goes through, you know, spectrometer to look at the, you know, basically the elements or the makeup of the material, or it gets destructive tested or whatever. And there's some tubings that, you know, like I said the other day, you know, like when they strain test something in a lab, it's over a several minute period, you know, that they're pulling something and stretching it apart to look at a failure point. And when you speed up that action and you do all of that in a second or fractions of a second, you know, the rate of strain, you know, like you know, I look at take a baseball bat for instance. You know, you ever see somebody hit a bunt ball? You know, they bunt it. You know, and you ever seen anybody break a bat bunting a ball? No. But when they're trying to crack a home run, the bat breaks in half. It's because of the speed at which they did it. You know, the bat can no longer withstand the strain, or you know, push your hand through a pool of water. You know, just push it real nice through a swimming pool, and the water can flow and bend and move and conform to what it needs to do. But if you do it at a high rate of speed, not only does it hurt your hand, the water just goes everywhere. Just it's catastrophic, right? So
Yep.
so the same thing happens when you crash a race car. And over the years, like materials that I've tested, um, and I've done it more for my own personal self, you know. And there's stuff that I look for that I won't put in a car in my shop that it doesn't meet my criteria because I've seen so much stuff that I've built my own, you know, database. And shame on me for not documenting everything, but I didn't think in my world, like, you know, who am I to document everything and tell people how to do it? You know, later on, like I figure now, like I've seen enough stuff, like, man, I've probably seen more stuff than anybody in the country or the world as far as what's come through my shop. And it doesn't matter if it's been a micro or if it's been a midget or, you know, a silver crown car or whatever. You know, we fix so much different stuff, and I can almost look at everybody's flaws, and I can look at something And I can call the manufacturer and say, hey man, there's what happened here in the last year because this stuff's acting different or whatever. And pretty much all the manufacturers. It's not like we talk every day, but I have open dialogue with a lot of car builders, and we can call each other and discuss stuff, and it's just nobody's trying to put anybody out of business or put anybody down. It's just trying to do the right thing and get better results for people. But like I said, the main thing is like I test all this stuff, and now I have my set parameters, my mental parameters that go, this tubing here is going to act like this, and this is not what I want. So you can get a test report and test and go, hey, this is so and so steel, and it's got these numbers or whatever. But if you don't know if that's the right material, you can have a test report and you can wipe your ass with this. No good if you don't
Yeah.
know if that's the right material for your application. So that's just where I am. Like I said, some people, you might look at stuff on test papers or whatever. I look at the papers and I already know what it's going to act like because I've seen it play out so many times. And like I said, my laboratory's my shop where I just sit there and just look at crashed race cars all day long. So
Yeah.
so like I said, I feel fortunate in that point that I have I feel like a pretty good grasp on what's going on there. Do I have the right answers? No, but I can at least tell you what doesn't work. I don't know what's perfect, but I can tell you what doesn't work anyway.
Yeah.
And I don't have any problem doing that. Like I don't have a problem posting something on social media and just blurting it out or saying, it's funny because like I get some safety people and stuff that will call me and or text me or something like that, and they're like, "Man, that's I'm glad you're saying something." And I'm like, "Dude, you're in the safety industry. Say something. Like, why don't you say something?" And everybody is so afraid of getting canceled or I might not sell product or whatever. And I'm under the firm belief like I can piss you off, but if I'm really good at what I do, you probably will have to come to see me anyway. Like, and that's not being arrogant. It's just maybe it is being arrogant. I don't know, but it's just the way I am. Like I'll do you a good job and I'll shoot you straight. And I have people that I've had a couple of people message me today. They're fixing a car. Um, the on their own. Like they're fabricator out in
Yeah.
California. And it was Corey Day's car that he crashed at Hangtown the other night.
Oh, yep.
And he's like, how would you fix this? And I put the stuff in a car at my shop and said, here, this is exactly how I would push it, and this is what I would do, and wish you well. Good luck with it.
Yeah.
Like there's plenty of work for everybody. Um, I just
They
want to
should have
make sure
just bought
everybody.
you a dang airplane ticket.
It was date night. I couldn't go out there on Monday. I got to take care of my mom on Monday. It was
Yeah,
date
but
night.
they got till next weekend. You could have gone tomorrow. I'm just kidding. But that's a
Um,
shameless plug for you too. And yeah, but and I didn't mean to interrupt you there, but I just thought, man, that's a good one there. So
yeah, yeah. But yeah,
and
I just like I said, I want to see. Man, it's one of the things in the world. Like I want to see everybody succeed. I'd like to see in a world where everybody's doing good. Can you imagine how many people would be happy and smiling or whatever instead of just the miserable stuff? Like maybe like when I post on Monday, me and my mom going out and doing something. I get a fair amount of people that hey, I don't have my mom, and glad you're appreciating it and stuff like that. And it's not controversy, it's not conflict, it's not who's right or wrong or whatever. It's two people having a good time, and it brings a smile to somebody's face. So what's wrong with that?
there's nothing wrong with that. So, and that's cool. I just wanted to try to get a better grasp and maybe some of the listeners that are going to be tuning in here about the tubing thing, about the integrity of the race cars and what you're always looking for and trying to make better every time. And I would agree with you, Flea, that a lot of people see it, a lot of people know it, but if they bring it up, if they bring it out, they're liable to get on the blacklist for
Yep.
whoever it is they're talking about, be it an engine builder, a chassis builder, a component builder, whatever it is. If certain people or sanctioning bodies or rule makers don't want to hear it, all of a sudden you're the guy that's making trouble.
Right. And it's sad that the world's like that. I like I said earlier, it's politicians and rule makers and bankers and lawyers and stuff like that. Anybody puts a suit on, is probably going to mess your day up. Change and change the kindness of your heart and how you would conduct business. Like it just man, I just wish everybody would just blurt it out there. And you don't there's no phoniness about it. You just blurt it out, and maybe it's not what you want to hear, but it's what I'm thinking at the time. And I appreciate when people are that way with me. Like I want somebody. Don't tell me. I wish you wouldn't do that. Please don't. Hey, you idiot! Stop what you're doing. That's not right. Like
Yeah.
just blurt it out, and we'll sort our feelings out later. But yeah, just do the right thing.
So one just question, I'm curious, and here's the one thing I want to make sure we know. No names, no brands, no types, but between a micro sprint, let's say an outlaw cart, micro sprint, silver cone, non-wing, winged chassis, you've seen 350 to 400 of them. Like I said, no names involved. Have you run across stuff that is not up to standards and you think it's for an advantage on the racetrack?
Yeah, there's always stuff that's for an advantage on the racetrack. People leaving stuff out, softer material, thinner frame rail, stuff like that. So there's always that. I think I posted earlier. Like there's always a way to manipulate something. If somebody wants you to run a 95 wall bottom rail and you think it makes the car too stiff, well, you can take and put a piece of DOM tubing in there that's 95 wall and is softer, so it gets the flex back in. Or there's always some way to manipulate the camera or whatever you're trying to do. What I really notice a lot, and it's in the eyes of safety. Okay, so like when the Outlaws or whoever comes out and says, "Hey, we need to put the safety bars in the roll cage to support the cage," right? I couldn't tell you how many cars I'd seen come through my shop the following year where those bars were just wire welded in. They weren't connected all the way around. It was just the shittiest weld. It was like 12-year-old me welded it together. And it's just and when you undercut something, when you undercut a weld, that's almost more dangerous than having a weld, because first off, you have to have softer filler rod in a weld for the weld to be able to give and bend. Okay, so say like a piece of chromoly is 100,000 pounds of tensile strength or whatever, and the filler material you put in it would be like a 70,000 pound rod. So that means that filler rod is a lot softer than the primary tube. Okay, that lets that weld move and give. When you undercut a weld and you don't put enough rod in there, what happens is the welder starts melting from the primary tube. So if you have a 95 wall down tube and a piece of 83 wall going into it, and you don't get enough filler rod in there, it starts robbing material. The weld puddle starts robbing material out of the primary tube and the upright to fill the gap. Okay, so the filler metal you're putting in there is now 100,000 pound material, so it's extremely stiff. It's the same, and now the tubing is no longer a 95 wall at that joint because you've robbed 10 or 15 thousandths out of it to fill the gap. So now that the tube is no stronger than the weakest point of it. So now that material might be 75 wall or 80 wall at that joint, and it fractures and gives and breaks. So
Yep.
like
exactly.
I said, a lot of the safety bars that come through, okay, hey, we're going to make them safer. We're going to mandate it. Good job, boys. But everybody is taking that thing. Just do fireworks back there.
Yeah, I don't know how that did that. That was awesome.
Good job, boys.
Yeah, that's cool. Just did it again.
Yeah. So
I got nothing on that one.
So hey, we're going to make it safer. We're going to make it better. But in the scheme of things, like we have people just welding random stuff in there to meet the criteria, and that could be more dangerous than not doing anything at all. People aren't going to drive their car back to Tennessee or to Illinois or wherever to get. I got a buddy. He went to Harbor Freight today. Man, we're fabricators. And it saves money and it's easy, and hey, it meets the specs. But it's probably not the best way to do it either.
Exactly. Flea, I think I could talk to you for another 3 hours, and we've already ripped through an hour and a half here, and
Has it been that long?
Yeah, it has been. I told you sometimes when you get going, it really flies. So, man, I appreciate you coming on. It was great getting to know you, getting to hear some aspect. I hope a lot of people get to learn about you, because I just think everything you do in the sprint car world since I've known you is cool. But the other thing is the way you conduct your life is more cool than that. So appreciate you taking some time out, and hopefully, I know you're going to be probably, I don't know if you go to the shootout, but I know you'll be at the Chili Bowl.
No, I'd rather do 10 chili bowls than one shootout, man. That shootout's just brutal.
It is.
If you're going there, respect, man, because that's a long day.
And one thing else that I didn't even bring up, if you're going to the Chili Bowl, are you taking I don't know what you call it, the Ripper Wagon, the Flea
The Jensen
Mobile?
wagon? No, it's sitting out my shop. Actually, I might take it to lunch tomorrow. Maybe send you a picture or something like that. But
Yeah.
man, I got to drag a wagon to Chili Bowl, so I can't take the station wagon. I got to take the trailer and truck and
Oh,
some race cars or whatever.
well,
So
and like I said, I know we were going to end this up, but it seemed like it was 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago. I think Spencer Baston had a bad deal in hot laps for the A main, I think.
Yep.
On the Saturday night show, and you were called into service, a guy that fixes 350 to 400 race cars a year, and is it fun to go to a moment like that and say, hey, you might need to help somebody out in a hurry, or is it just the way you roll? Or to me, it would seem like, yeah, you're in the heat of the moment. What's that like?
So first off, it's cool, right? Like it's a feather in the cap knowing that somebody seeks you out. Like I get cars like at my shop, and I'm in Central Illinois, okay? And last week we had a car come up from Texas that got fixed, and it's nothing to have cars come in from California, North Carolina, Pennsylvania. I mean, they travel from everywhere, and that makes me proud that how many fab shops. I've had people bring cars over from Indianapolis, and how many fab shops are there, like
Yeah.
so it makes me proud that we have a good reputation for what we do. And as far as fixing somebody's car at the track, um, man, I remember when I was a broke ass racer and I couldn't get anybody to help me or something like that. I want to tell you a story. I want to tell you a story. Um, we're probably, I'm going to say like 1993, Lanny, and I'm at Farmer City Speedway. And I don't know if you ever heard of Steve Knepper that
Oh,
ran
yeah.
midgets forever. Steve
Yep.
is an absolute Hall of Fame legend, and his dad, Junior Knepper, Hall of Fame mechanic. And I remember I couldn't get my car to run, and I do not remember what the problem was. And I was a shy kid, right? And somehow I got the balls to go down and talk to Junior Knepper, and I said, Junior, my car's doing this. Do you have any ideas what I should be looking for or whatever? And I wish I remembered the situation a little bit better, but here's what I remember about it. Junior told me to do something, and I went out there and I did it, and I outrun Steve Knepper and I won the heat race. And I was so freaking happy, man. I went running down there and I'm smiling, and like I just beat Steve Knepper in a heat race and held him off for whatever 8 or 10 laps. And I get there and I walk down to Junior and I said, man, that was perfect. It's still doing just a little bit of this, Junior. And I remember Junior looked at me with just the solid of his face, and I said, what do you think I should do now? And he said, well, it looked like you was good enough to beat us. Go figure the rest out on your own. And that was it. But like when it comes to like basting and stuff like that, like man, I know what it's like to be in a pickle. And man, if I'm there and I can help somebody, I didn't go down to Dave Estep or Spencer Basin or whatever and say, well, if you give me $300 or 500, I'll fix this for you. There was never any money. It's never about the money. It's a competitor, and if I went down there and I needed a wheel or a torsion bar or something, they would loan it to me. And if
Yep.
I could help somebody fix their day and turn a bad night better, I'm all in. And in the reality of it, like who's there that can get it done in that time frame? That's what I do. So I'm probably more efficient about it than most people in the pit area. And I remember Derek Schwalbauer, who works at Spike, was there helping me, and Kevin Ramey, and we all pitched in, and it wasn't, well, it's a Spike chassis. This guy can.
Yeah.
We were all just human beings and trying to help somebody out, and same, last year for Santino Ferrucci, like I've known Santino
Yeah.
for a couple of years, and his first Chili Bowl, he come out and hung out at my trailer for most of the week, and we had James Davison, who's an IndyCar racer, there, and Santino's just a likable dude. So when he crashed, like I walked down there and like, man, can I help you? Can I do something? And we was able to help him out. So it's nothing for like me to go to a race and somebody have problems and man, I'll offer it, or if they come find me and I don't know about the problem, or if I know about the problem, I'll come down and offer, because like I said, I know what it's like to be struggling and have issues. And man, if there was a guy that had a company that fixed semi trailers, and I fixed race cars, like, hey, I got a semi trailer problem, I'm gonna go find this guy, because
Yeah.
he knows what he's doing. I posted something in response to Paul Silva, last week or whatever, talking about people that help you out and stuff like that. And I'm a firm believer, like you don't have to be smart in every subject. You don't have to, if you know the right people. Like I don't have to be the smartest person if as long as I know the person that's good at that subject.
Yeah.
And if I have a sprint car issue and I don't know how to get my car around the track, like I would text Paul or whatever, and hey, you have any advice for me, or uh, it just, if I have a torsion bar issue, you call somebody up and that's smarter than you on metals or whatever, you don't have to be the smartest person in the room if you have access to those people. And those people change depending on what the subject is. So,
So true.
use
So true.
use your resources and find the answers. Like and as far as like you go back to engineering papers and stuff like that, and it's sad, but even the greatest engineers in the world, they've lost several spacecraft. Like things happen in engineering. It's not a perfect world, but at least learn from what you've done, and try to make the world better. That's the whole idea. Every time you wake up, is when you wake up, make sure the world's a better place when you fall asleep than when you woke up. So
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
do your part to contribute.
That's a great way to end it right there, Flea. Honestly, I just, like I said, appreciate you spending some time with me tonight, and hopefully, I'll get a chance to run across you. Hopefully, next time I run across you, it's not in the work area at the Knoxville Nationals, trying to
I
hammer a nose
appreciate
ring
I
back
appreciate
together.
I appreciate the help, my man.
Yep, yep. Well, those are the only resources I have. A
That's
rivet
what it was.
gun.
I was
I'm just
struggling. I had
kidding.
to do something, and what did
Yeah.
you offer to help me for? Because you wanted the attention, or you just wanted to see somebody. You had the ability to help somebody, and you stepped in. And you did what you could.
Yeah, yeah, and that's the way I
So
was raised too. So it's all
yeah.
super good. So, all right, well, Flea, like I said, I'll definitely see you down the road, and thanks again for coming on the show.
One other thing I want to say, going back to like race car safety and stuff like that, is anybody that reaches out to me, I don't care if they're a car builder or a sanctioning body or anything. I'm open book with everything that I have. I tell them exactly what I see, what I think. Maybe I don't have the right answer, but I at least, if somebody has the balls to call me and reach out, I'll give them everything I have to try to help them. So if anybody has questions or anything like that, get a hold of me somehow. My direct messages are always open on Twitter. Um, Sometimes they get piled up a little bit, but I try to get back to everybody within a day or so. And yeah, that's it. I mean,
Any other way they can contact you? Do they email or anything like that?
like
Or
email,
is
like
Twitter the best way to go?
Twitter really is. It's basically the only social media I have. I don't have Facebook, nothing like that. And
Yep.
if you try to call, I rarely answer the phone, because it's nothing to get stuck on a phone for an hour. And
Yeah.
somebody would casually talk because they have nothing going on. Nobody's going to text you. Nobody's going to type for a fucking an hour. So
No, exactly. You're
make sure
so right.
you bleep that word too.
Nah, you know what? We're all good. You knew the goal. Man, we made it to the last possible
We did
moment.
good.
It's all good. You did good.
Yep.
So, all right, for the third time, Flea, I am signing off. Thanks again, and I will definitely see you down the road somewhere.
Appreciate you, Lanny. Be good.
Okay.
See you, buddy.
All right, everyone, that is Flea Ruzik, and man, what a great guy he is. I told you guys, if you're listening, you're going to really enjoy this show. You're going to learn a lot about a guy that has done so much for the industry of open wheel dirt track racing in any way, shape, or form. Just a very knowledgeable guy. So cool to listen to him again and get to know him a little bit better. I want to thank everybody for being patient, like I said in the open of the show, for me stepping away for a little bit. Like I said, we're going to try to get back to normal here. If you guys want, give me a share. Give me a like, subscribe to my stuff. We're everywhere on social media: Facebook, Twitter, Apple, Spotify, you name it, YouTube, we're on it. The more followers I can get, the more likes I can get, all that stuff. March is going to help me out more to get some more content to you guys. And I'm really looking forward to get going again. Relating to Flea, if you want to, I would recommend you follow him on Twitter because he's got some great stuff. It's the only place he's at. He's not on any other social media aspects. So check him out at RipJetson9 on Twitter. He's got some great informative stuff. He's got some stuff that he shares about his family, and it's just he's just a good person to follow. So thanks again, everybody, for tuning in, and we're going to see you back here real soon. I promise. Everybody, have a great day.